How do you plan the perfect government? Dr. Jacob says, I wouldn't change anything, let them govern themselves. In this episode of the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast, Dr. Jacob Kashiwagi explains how he would run the government versus a large business and the nuances of leading each one. He describes how things need to be done more democratically in one organization versus the other, using examples like Sadaam Hussein in Iraq. Learn one view on how to lead in business and government in this episode.
Welcome to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast, episode 68.
Everyone wants happiness and success, and we know how to get you there. Come listen to the Leadership Society of Arizona as we teach a proven logic to help you simplify life, overcome challenges, and predict the future. You're listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. Welcome to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. My name is Chuck Solanas, and I'm joined by our special guest, Dr. Jacob Kashiwagi.
Hello, Chuck.
Hello. Okay, so this is a hypothetical question. If you had the ability to change government any way that you wanted, starting from scratch, how would you organize it?
Interesting. Okay, this is what I would do. I'd get everybody together and I'd let them know we're organizing the government. So send your representative. And I'd let people in their own group send whoever they want. And then with the representatives, I'd let them organize themselves and tell them, okay, who do you want to be your leader? And I let them all vote on the people they think would be the best leaders. And then once they find out who their leaders are, I would let them, with the leaders, decide on what the rules are. And when they come up with the rules, then I'd let them determine how they will be enforced and what will happen. And then I would let them go out to the public and let them convince the public of what's going on. And if the public doesn't agree with it and riots, then I know it's probably going to have to be changed. And so once the riots occur, changes will happen because people will like fight against each other. Some people might perish, some people might survive. And then we get them all together again, do it again. Eventually, we'll have a good form of government that everyone agrees upon. Some people might disagree, but not enough to riot, which is what we want. And then that is, I think, how I would do it.
Okay. And would you do the same sort of thing when you are starting a business?
Yeah, I kind of would, except if I'm starting a business, then I guess, see, here's the difference between a government and a business. A business is never usually as big as a government, meaning a business only involves a couple of people and in one sector of life. The government has to cover all the people in every sector of life. And so the bigger it goes, the more the people have to determine what's going on. But if it's something smaller, where I am the leader, and people come to the business because I'm the leader, then it's a little bit different because then I'm not trying to find out who the people want to lead them. Then I know I'm the leader. I know people are looking to me. And so if I were to start a business, I wouldn't go to the population and tell them what type of business should we start and who should lead the business. But what I would do is I would know what I want to do. And then I'd make sure I know the people well enough to know what they will buy. So I know that I can use my talent to give the people something they want. And so the people always will impact, whether it's a government or a business, they will always impact how you do things. But in a business, I can direct it more because I am the leader. So in a business, I can pick my employees. I can identify based upon my employees what the people want and how my employees will want the business. So I guess one is a lot more freedom. One is a little bit more structured, and maybe I'm a little bit more in control.
Okay. And you don't, so you don't think of government like a business, right? You think it's separate.
No, yes, government. Well, government is like a business, but it's not because there's so many people involved. Like the biggest business we have is what? I don't know the biggest business in the world, but maybe they
I think
employ.
military.
But military is the government still. The only reason the military is able to go is because government's funding it, right?
Yeah.
But like
But
a private business or organization, what, maybe like a couple 100,000 people? Maybe 1 million people at the most?
probably, yeah.
I don't know, but say 1 million or a couple million. Well, in the US government, that's the government I would be thinking of like a government. I mean, they're over what? US citizens is what, over 250 million or something?
Over 350.
350 million. So that's quite a bit more people than like a business ever would have. And it makes a difference.
Okay. All right. And so I guess same questions, but how would you organize government if you started with how it is today?
How would I organize it? I'd leave it exactly how it is. Look, there's a reason why government is the way government is. And I don't know how people feel about it, but the government is a representation of people. Because the people decide. And so when you go to different states, the people will decide who will be the representatives, what they spend money on, things like that. If I were to go into an existing system and say, okay, well, I'm going to change it, well, that would kind of be going against how it got there in the first place. And a lot of people might say, well, what if a government was corrupt and it was created through corruptness? Well, yeah, but that corruptness was there for a reason, or there's it didn't just all of a sudden, corruptness appeared by randomness and created this thing, right? So, however, whether it was done fairly, whether it was done corruptly, whether it was done through an equal vote and everyone had an equal say, or whether certain people had more say than other people. That happened for a reason. And so if I were to change the government, I would have to change something about the situation as well. And that I don't know if it's possible, right? It's like if I were to disband the government and create it again, it'd be the exact same way. Unless I move the money around so that the people who have a lot of money now doesn't have a lot of money, or like I sent half the people of the population to somewhere else so they couldn't participate, right? Which is not possible. So I would leave it exactly the way it is.
Okay. And then say an existing business, you take over like Google, for example. How would you change the organization there?
In a business, if I were to take over the business, there's only one of two things I'm going to do. And I take this from Nikolai Machiavelli, who has one of the oldest leadership books, right? And basically what he told the king, look, if you go and take over somewhere, you got to do one of two things. Either one, you have to kill everybody. You got to kill everybody and put new people there. Or two, you let the people stay and you let them do exactly what they're doing. Let them keep whatever it is they have and don't change anything. And I find that very wise. Because either one, if you want to change, you better get rid of all the people, at least all the management. Because if you leave the same management there, well, they're comfortable doing their current way of management. And if you force them to change, one, they can't change, or two, they'll be very resentful for it. So if I'm going to business and I want to change it because it's not doing well, I'm eliminating all the management and I'm letting the new management determine who their employees are. Some employees might be good, some might not be for the new management, but I'd let the management decide that. That's how I do it. If the business was running well, like Google, I'd leave it. I'd let everyone do it, and I would just tell people what a great job they're doing, how happy I am with them.
Okay. All right. Very interesting perspective. I guess I think I was expecting that. But based on those answers, I was expecting some of that. A lot of what people think is good leadership has a lot to do with changing things, making people change how they're doing things and be different than how they are so they can be more efficient, be more productive, etc. And what you often talk about is the alignment leadership approach. And so I am curious why you wouldn't apply something like that, like a new structure, into these organizations rather than you would rather just keep it the same.
Well, here's the thing that people don't realize is things don't happen by randomness. So the government, different types of governments, you go to different countries, they have different types of governments, right? Some are more controlling, some are less controlling. And people don't realize that even in like a government where it seems like it's oppressive, like a leader is very oppressive to the people, there's a reason it's like that. Because people naturally gravitate and go to and create things that they need and is what they're willing to deal with or what they can deal with. And so, I look at the greatest example is Iraq. And people don't know a lot about it. They only know what's been said on the media. But I actually researched quite a bit on it. I read quite a bit on it. And when Saddam Hussein was the head of Iraq, everyone thought, well, the people are being forced to have him as their leader. They need to have, more democratic government maybe, or whatever it might be. But I like Iraq because it's a good case study. Because I have no political views. I have no opinion on anything, but I like to see before and after. I like to see cause and effect. And so this is one where a lot of people had a lot of different views on Saddam Hussein. So eventually Saddam Hussein was taken out and killed. and things tried to be changed for the better. But when you look at the results of when Saddam Hussein was in power and when they took him out, you start seeing a big difference. You start seeing as soon as Saddam Hussein was taken out of the government, literacy levels fell. All the trained professionals fled the country. Electricity was no longer consistent. Prices started to rise. You saw all these detrimental effects that just destabilized the country. And now, whenever I talk to someone from Iraq, usually when they've lived there before and after Saddam Hussein, they actually say it was much better with Saddam Hussein in power. Now, did Saddam Hussein do a lot of crazy things like kill a lot of people and use his power to do things that he wanted that might not have been per se just? Yes. But if you look at what happened while Saddam Hussein was in power, well, Saddam Hussein caused the country to become totally literate, meaning everyone learned to read and write. Saddam Hussein drew a lot of money into the country to create universities, create stable power, electricity, lower prices for goods. So a lot of things happened in the country that were, when you look at the statistics and the effect, was really, really good. But as soon as Saddam Hussein was taken out, different type of government, now it's not nearly as good as what it was. And so when you just look at the numbers without having any opinion, you start realizing that sometimes government is the way it is for a reason.
Yeah, and that's sort of an emotional issue too, because it's tied to a lot of different events that are emotional triggers in people's lives as well. So
Sure.
tough to talk about. I also think that there's a lot to be said from statistics, but when emotions are involved, a lot of times that they get the best of people. So they may know what's reasonable, what's best to do, but when it becomes an emotional thing, it just all bets are off.
And that's the thing, is when you look at Iraq per se, it has so many different cultural ethnicities. And before Saddam Hussein, there was 20 coup d'etats in like so many years, or 8 coup d'etats in 20 years, or something like that. A high number, meaning the government changed over multiple times within a very small amount of years. And so when you're dealing with a lot of different cultures, a lot of different types of people, and a lot of them, it's really tough to do anything because everyone has a different opinion on what's right, what's wrong. Everyone will feel good and bad about different things. So if I am taking over a government or I have the power to change something in any way, I'm at a lot of risk. Because say I say, okay, I'm going to make an alignment model, I'm going to do it this way. Well, I'm going to offend 50% of the people if I make any decision. If I make any decision here in this government, they're going to point to me and say, why did you do that? All of these reasons. And I am not going to put myself at risk. So when I deal with a lot of different groups of people and a lot of emotions, I make no decision. Right? I'm not going to be the cause of anything here. There's too much risk in that for me. That's why I don't do anything. That's why I let the people do it. I let the people choose. I let everybody else do it because then they can't blame me. Then it's them. Then they're the ones who chose it. They're the ones who decided what's going to happen. And that's why I wouldn't go in and try and like change things up. Does that make sense? In a smaller group, when you have less people, you have less emotions, you have less differing views, especially if like you start an education company, you only attract people in education there and people who want to educate your way. So when you have an organization with all the same minds, not as much differential there, not as many people, not as many emotions, then you can actually go in and determine a lot more things.
No, totally agree. Well, I appreciate that perspective. Very interesting perspective, a lot different than what many other people might do. So
Now,
appreciate the time.
you're welcome, Chuck. Now, for the audience, the takeaway from this would be, if you are the leader of a large group of people, the best thing for you to do is to relax. Don't try to make too many changes, because it's going to cause you a lot of issues, as we've seen in history. But go in and allow the people to determine, right? The less you do, the better. The more you let other people take control, the better. Because that's really all you can do if you get into a large group of people.
Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you so much, Dr. Jacob. Thank you, listeners, for listening and viewers for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. It would be great if you could take a moment to write us a review. For any questions, comments, or topics that you would like to have addressed on the show, email the team at leadaz.org. To learn more about the Leadership Society of Arizona, visit us at leadaz.org.